The relentless chill of dawn often found Ethan Vance already awake, his breath fogging in the pre-morning gloom of Viridia's bustling streets. At 26, with eyes that held the weary wisdom of too many cold nights and too few good meals, he was a fixture on a particular grimy street corner. Here, amidst the growing rumble of delivery trucks and the distant metallic clang of the city waking up, he would meticulously set up his easel. The scent of spray paint, his chosen medium, mingled with the acrid exhaust fumes of passing cars, a strange urban symphony that was his daily backdrop. He wasn't just a street artist, he was a silent observer, a chronicler of the city's forgotten narratives, translating the harsh beauty of urban decay and the quiet dignity of its inhabitants onto canvas. His worn clothes, splattered with a kaleidoscope of colors, were a testament to his dedication, a uniform of unwavering passion. His hands, though calloused and perpetually stained with paint, moved with a surprising delicacy, coaxing vibrant life from inert materials. Ethan had cultivated an almost invisible presence. He learned to blend, to observe without being observed, a skill honed by years of navigating the city's indifferent sprawl. People bustled past him, a blur of hurried footsteps and averted gazes, their lives brimming with purpose and possessions that felt light years away from his own existence. They rarely paused, seeing him as just another anonymous figure fading into the city's vast, unforgiving tapestry. Ethan didn't mind. His focus was absolute, a meditative state where the brush in his hand became an extension of his very soul. He found a profound solace in the act of creation, a temporary escape from the gnawing emptiness in his stomach and the biting cold that seeped into his bones. His mind, though often preoccupied with the logistics of survival, was a vibrant landscape of colors, forms, and stories waiting to be told. He saw the profound in the mundane, the story in every shadow, and he painted with an urgency born of knowing that beauty, like warmth, was fleeting. His eyes, though often tired from nights spent on park benches or in forgotten alcoves, held a spark of intense observation, seeing the profound in the mundane, the story in every shadow. His canvases, vibrant and raw, were his eloquent protests. They captured the unseen beauty in faded brickwork, the resilience in a weathered face, the fleeting warmth in a moment of shared humanity. There was a particular series he had been working on, titled Echoes of Viridia, which focused on the city's crumbling historical architecture, juxtaposed with the vibrant, ephemeral life of its hidden communities. He used a unique blend of spray paint and classical oil techniques, creating a textured depth that gave his street art an unexpected gravitas, a detail often lost on hurried pedestrians, but occasionally catching the eye of a more discerning passerby. He dreamed of one day showing his work in a gallery, not for fame or fortune, but for the chance to have his message, the voices of the unseen, truly heard. It was a distant, almost laughable dream for a man who slept under bridges, but it kept a flicker of hope alive within him. One particularly bleak afternoon, the sky a bruised purple that threatened rain, Ethan was attempting to capture the desolate beauty of a solitary streetlight against a backdrop of darkening clouds. Its lone, struggling glow against the encroaching gloom felt profoundly resonant. His fingers, stiff from the cold, moved with practiced grace, coaxing life onto the canvas. He was so absorbed in the interplay of light and shadow that he didn't immediately notice the small shadow that fell across his work. He looked up to see a young child, no older than 7, with wide, curious eyes, peering intently at his half-finished painting. Her small hand clutched a threadbare doll, its yarn hair frayed, and her thin jacket offered little protection against the biting wind. Her mother, preoccupied with wrangling a younger sibling and laden with grocery bags, tugged impatiently at the child's arm, murmuring apologies to Ethan as she tried to pull her away. Ethan felt a familiar pang of empathy. He saw the genuine fascination in the child's gaze, a pure, unadulterated appreciation for the colors and forms, untouched by the cynicism of adulthood or the grind of city life. Despite the gnawing emptiness in his own stomach, despite the pressing urgency of making a sale, even a small one, he paused his work. He reached into his worn satchel, pulling out a discarded piece of sturdy cardboard, its surface surprisingly clean. With swift, confident strokes, His charcoal danced across the rough surface, quickly forming the vibrant image of a tiny bird, its wings outstretched as if in mid-flight, bursting from the confines of the cardboard. He added a splash of electric blue and fiery orange with a marker he kept tucked behind his ear, making the bird almost leap from the drab background. The bird, a symbol of freedom and hope, was a recurring motif in his personal sketches, a private language he used to express his deepest longings. "For you," he said, his voice softer than the city's usual cacophony, a gentle murmur against the urban roar. He offered the sketch to the child, holding it out with an open, trusting gesture. Her eyes lit up, transforming her small face with pure, unadulterated joy. She gasped, a tiny, reverent sound, and clutched the drawing to her chest as if it were the most precious treasure. Her embarrassed mother fumbled in her purse for a coin, her cheeks flushing with a mixture of gratitude and apology for having disturbed him. But Ethan gently shook his head, a genuine smile touching his lips. "No, thank you. It's a gift. Art should be for everyone." This small act of kindness, prioritizing art's ability to bring simple joy over his own desperate need for money, highlighted his inherent generosity, the purity of his artistic spirit, and his unwavering belief that beauty and hope should be accessible to all, not just those with full pockets. He felt a fleeting warmth, a quiet satisfaction that was more nourishing than any meal. It reminded him of a time, long ago, when giving had felt as natural as breathing. As he returned to his painting, the unexpected movement of reaching for his supplies caused a small, distinctive silver locket, tarnished with age and bearing a unique, intricate Celtic knot design, to slip partially from beneath the collar of his worn shirt. It was old, clearly an heirloom, its surface dulled by time and neglect, but its craftsmanship hinted at a forgotten elegance, a lineage of intricate artistry. Ethan's hand instinctively flew to it, tucking it quickly back beneath the fabric, as if protecting a vulnerable secret. Yet, a fleeting expression of deep sadness and longing crossed his face, a momentary crack in his stoic facade. The locket was clearly a cherished memento, a tangible link to a lost family connection, a hidden past of privilege that felt utterly alien to his current life on the streets. He had worn it since he could remember, a silent companion through years of solitude and hardship. It hummed with a faint, almost imperceptible warmth against his skin, a sensation he had felt since childhood, especially when his artistic instincts were stirred. This warmth, an internal echo, suggested a deeper, almost mystical origin, or significance, that linked him to a powerful, forgotten heritage, a legacy of which he was only vaguely, painfully aware. He knew it had belonged to his mother, but the details of her life, and his own early childhood, were shrouded in a thick fog of trauma and suppression. It was a secret he rarely acknowledged, a fragment of a life that felt like a distant, unreachable dream, buried under years of hardship and abandonment. Yet it remained his most treasured possession. He often wondered about its true origin, the meaning of the intricate knot, the identity of the people whose faces he vaguely recalled from the faded photographs inside it. But the street demanded his full attention, leaving little room for introspection or the luxury of chasing ghosts. Still, the locket was a constant reminder that his story, like his art, had deeper layers than met the eye, a promise whispered from a forgotten past. It was the only remaining link to a time before the streets swallowed him whole, a time when he was not just Ethan Vance, the street artist, but someone else entirely, someone whose very existence had been carefully, meticulously erased. And a deep, almost instinctual feeling told him that this small, tarnished piece of silver held the key to unlocking not just his personal history, but a profound truth about the art world he now only observed from its periphery. The crisp morning air usually carried the promise of a fresh canvas for Ethan, a new story waiting to unfold on the grimy brick walls or the forgotten alleyways of Viridia. But today the air felt different, heavy with a suffocating dread. His customary street corner, the very patch of sidewalk that had become his outdoor studio, his sanctuary, his only reliable spot for visibility and occasional sales, was suddenly swarming with city officials. They moved with an unsettling efficiency, erecting signs that declared the area a no-artist zone, citing vague urban beautification initiatives and public order regulations. A chill deeper than the morning air seeped into Ethan's bones. This draconian order, he instinctively knew, was no random bureaucratic whim. It was a direct hit. He'd seen the scathing articles, the thinly veiled contempt in the city's most prestigious art columns. This ban was a direct result of complaints lodged by Julian Thorne, the city's most influential and notoriously arrogant art critic. Thorne, a man whose pronouncements could make or break careers, viewed street art as nothing more than glorified graffiti, a blight on the urban landscape, an eyesore that polluted the refined aesthetic of true art. He had specifically singled out Ethan's work in his recent widely read column, dismissing it with sneering disdain as crude, unsophisticated, and an insult to true artistic expression. He had even gone so far as to imply that street artists were little more than vagrants masquerading as creators, devoid of formal training or genuine talent. For Thorne, art was a controlled, exclusive realm, only accessible through the hallowed halls of academia and elite galleries. Ethan, with his spray cans and his canvas on a sidewalk, represented everything Thorne despised: authenticity, accessibility, and a raw, untamed spirit. The official declaration, nailed unceremoniously to a lamppost near Ethan's usual spot, directly threatened his livelihood. It was more than just a ban on painting. It was an attempt to silence his voice, to erase his presence, to extinguish the spark of creativity that had kept him alive. It felt like a personal attack, a deliberate act of cultural censorship designed to push him, and others like him, further into the shadows. Ethan's initial reaction was a bitter cocktail of resignation and profound helplessness. The streets were all he knew. Every other promising spot he'd tried in the past had eventually been claimed or regulated. This ban felt like the final blow, robbing him of his last shred of dignity and purpose. His first instinct, honed by years of survival, was to simply disappear, to find another forgotten alley, to fade into the anonymous background of the city. He could try to sell his art in secret, perhaps, or find menial labor to survive. The weight of the city, vast and indifferent, pressed down on him, threatening to crush the last vestiges of his spirit. But as he began to pack up his sparse supplies, his few precious cans of spray paint, his worn brushes, the half-finished canvas, he noticed the sad, knowing faces of the few regulars who genuinely appreciated his art. There was old Mrs. Gable, who always bought a postcard-sized sketch of a city pigeon for her grandson, her eyes always crinkling with warmth. There were the construction workers from the site across the street, who paused their lunch breaks to watch him, offering gruff but genuine words of admiration. And he remembered the incandescent joy on the little girl's face just yesterday, when he gave her the bird sketch, the simple beauty of art, bringing light to a difficult life. A quiet rage, cold and steady, began to simmer within him. This ban wasn't just about him. It was about silencing the voices of the marginalized, about art being accessible only to the elite, about dictating what was considered worthy and what was deemed trash. It was about power, not aesthetics. A forgotten memory, hazy yet potent, surfaced in his mind. His grandmother, a fiercely independent woman with paint-stained fingers and a mischievous glint in her eye, passionately advocating for art for the common people, for beauty to be found in every corner of life, not just within the gilded cages of galleries. She had believed art was a conversation, a bridge, not a barrier. This surge of memory, a faint echo of her indomitable spirit, ignited a dormant fire within Ethan. He couldn't let this injustice stand. He felt a profound moral obligation to fight for the right of art to exist freely, especially outside the rigid, self-serving definitions imposed by critics like Thorne. This ban, he realized, was not just a threat to his livelihood, but an assault on the very soul of art itself. His resolve solidified. He would not disappear. He would not be silenced. This was his point of no return. Later that afternoon, seeking refuge from a sudden downpour in the cramped, humid interior of a Greasy Spoon diner, Ethan huddled over a lukewarm coffee. Through the condensation-streaked window, he saw a junior city official, a nervous, fresh-faced man, meeting with a well-dressed gallery owner. Their conversation, though hushed, carried across the cramped space. "Julian Thorne," the gallery owner grumbled, stirring his coffee with exaggerated frustration. "He's curating the Viridia Modern Art Showcase this year. It's supposed to be the exclusive, invitation-only exhibition celebrating true genius. But it's going to be a disaster. Thorne only promotes what he understands, which is to say, what's established. He despises anything new, anything that challenges his narrow view, especially anything from outside his elite circles. He believes only artists with a classical academic background can truly contribute to art. The mention of classical academic background and elite circles struck a deep, resonant chord within Ethan. His cup clattered softly against the saucer. Fragmented memories, not of the harsh, cold streets, but of a grand, sunlit studio from his early childhood, suddenly flashed before his eyes. He saw himself, a much younger boy, in that studio, filled with the rich scent of oil paint, the gentle hum of classical music, and the quiet presence of a stern but loving tutor. He recalled patiently being taught intricate classical techniques, lessons far beyond what any self-taught street artist would typically know. He remembered being surrounded by expensive canvases, ancient art books, and hushed conversations about his family's legacy. A prominent name in art history, a lineage of celebrated artists, now seemingly erased from his conscious memory. He'd always dismissed these flashes as childhood fantasies, fragmented dreams from a traumatic past. But now, in the context of Julian Thorne's rigid definition of true art, they felt chillingly real. The pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving began to click into place. His early artistic prowess, the effortless way he understood composition and color theory, his innate ability to blend classical techniques with modern expression. It wasn't just raw talent, it was training, it was lineage, and the silver locket, the one that hummed with a strange warmth against his skin, suddenly felt heavier, imbued with a new, profound significance. The realization dawned on him with a jolt. Julian Thorne might not just be a pretentious critic. He might be connected to Ethan's forgotten past. Perhaps Thorne was even someone who had directly benefited from his family's disappearance from the art world. Someone whose own standing had been elevated by the systematic erasure of a rival lineage. The very idea sent a tremor through him, a mix of fear and righteous anger. This potential familial connection, combined with the imminent threat to his artistic freedom, transformed his quiet desperation into a burning resolve. He could no longer remain a silent, dismissed artist, content to simply survive. He had to confront Thorne, not just to reclaim his spot on the street, but to uncover the truth of his own artistic heritage and challenge the very definition of art itself. The battle for his street corner was now a battle for his identity, his past, and the very soul of art. He would fight fire with fire, paint with truth. The air in the esteemed Thorne Gallery shimmered with an almost suffocating aura of exclusivity and self-importance. Crystal chandeliers, suspended like glittering ice formations, dripped light onto a polished marble floor that reflected the dazzling jewels and impeccably tailored suits of Viridia's wealthiest art patrons. The scent of expensive perfumes and aged oak mingled with the subtle clinical tang of freshly restored canvases, creating an atmosphere that felt both pristine and profoundly sterile. This was the hallowed ground where Julian Thorne, the city's most influential and notoriously arrogant art critic, held court. He moved with an air of absolute authority, his every gesture a subtle pronouncement, his every word considered gospel by the sycophantic crowd that orbited him. Ethan felt like an intruder, a discordant note in this carefully orchestrated symphony of privilege. He was disguised, barely, in a borrowed, ill-fitting dark suit, its fabric too coarse, its cut too unfamiliar. It was a thin shield against the penetrating gazes of the gallery's patrons, but it allowed him to blend, a shadow among the light, slipping through the clusters of people admiring the art on display. His heart pounded, a frantic drum against his ribs, a rhythm of both fear and fierce determination. He had spent days planning this, researching the gallery's layout, observing Thorne's habits, fueled by a desperate need to save his art, his livelihood, and to unearth the truth of his forgotten past. At the heart of it all stood Julian Thorne, radiating an aura of cultivated power. He was an imposing figure, his silver hair impeccably coiffed, his tailored suit a second skin. His charm, when deployed, was as sharp and precise as a surgeon's scalpel, cutting through any dissenting opinion with a dismissive wave of his hand. Tonight, he was giving an impromptu, highly theatrical speech about the sanctity of classical art and the enduring genius of tradition, his voice smooth and confident, implicitly justifying his disdain for street art and any form of unconventional expression. He spoke of art as a sacred lineage, reserved for those with the proper lineage and academic pedigree, a veiled dig at anything that dared to exist outside his narrow, privileged definition. His words were a thinly veiled attack on artists like Ethan, an assertion of his absolute authority in the art world. Ethan watched him, a knot of dread and fierce resolve twisting in his stomach. Thorne was the Type B antagonist, a personification of arrogant elitism and entrenched prejudice. He didn't seek to destroy for personal gain like a truly malicious villain, but rather to preserve his own worldview, to maintain a rigid hierarchy in an art world he believed only he truly understood. His method was public scorn and dismissive rhetoric, wielding his influence like a weapon. As Thorne briefly stepped away from the main cluster of admirers, accepting a glass of chilled white wine from a passing waiter, his back momentarily turned to the glittering crowd, Ilara seized her chance. Her palms were sweating, but her resolve was iron. She approached him, moving as discreetly as possible, her eyes fixed on his profile. "Mr. Thorne," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper above the polite din. He turned, his gaze dismissive, then hardening into a cold, critical appraisal as he took in her slightly disheveled appearance. His eyes, accustomed to judging, swept over her, cataloging her obvious discomfort in the expensive clothes. "Can I help you, young man? Are you lost? This is a private event." His tone was polite, but edged with an unmistakable, condescending disdain. Without a word, Ilara reached into the inner pocket of his ill-fitting jacket. Her fingers closed around the small, intricately carved wooden bird charm. She held it out, just enough for him to see, for the gallery's spotlight to catch its worn, ancient surface. It was a replica, carefully carved by Ethan himself, a test to see if Thorne would recognize the original's unique design and the material it was meant to evoke. Thorne's face, usually a mask of controlled composure, flickered. A flash of shock, raw and undeniable, crossed his features. His eyes, cold and calculating just moments before, widened, then narrowed into icy slits of recognition as he stared at the familiar Celtic knot design. "What is this?" he hissed, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl, barely audible above the polite murmurs. "Where did you get that?" The sudden intensity in his voice was chilling, completely out of character for the usually unflappable critic. He quickly regained his composure, his jaw tightening, but the brief tremor in his hand as he gripped his wineglass was noticeable. "Security!" he snapped, his voice barely audible above the music, yet carrying an undeniable command. "This person is trespassing! Remove him at once!" He made a dismissive gesture, as if swatting away a fly, but his gaze remained fixed on the wooden charm, a mixture of fear and fury warring in his eyes. Two burly security guards, already moving at his subtle signal, began to close in on Ethan. This was it, his one chance. He knew he had to make him understand, to prove his connection before he was swallowed by the anonymous crowd. He remembered fragmented whispers from his earliest childhood, not just about an art lineage, but about a specific, almost mythical family tradition tied to the creation of the locket itself, a secret passed down through generations of artists in his bloodline. He focused, the words forming on his tongue, a very specific, deeply personal phrase associated with the craftsmanship and hidden meaning of the Celtic knot on the locket. A phrase only a select few, intimately connected to his family's ancient artistic legacy, would know. As the guards reached for him, their hands large and imposing, Ethan straightened his shoulders. His voice, though soft and strained with nerves, carried a surprising force, cutting through the murmurs of the gala like a silver thread. Through shadow and light, the threads entwine, the artist's soul, a lineage divine. Only those who truly see behold the hidden artistry within the Celtic tree. He didn't just speak the words, he let a raw, unyielding passion infuse them, his eyes locking with Thorne's, a desperate plea for recognition. The words hung in the air, utterly out of place amidst the clinking glasses and polite laughter. This cryptic phrase, a family motto known only to the innermost circles of his forgotten artistic lineage, delivered with such unexpected clarity and emotional depth by a seemingly unknown street artist, was his unveiling, a subtle yet undeniable proof of his profound familial connection to a renowned, perhaps even ancient, artistic dynasty. It was a direct, undeniable challenge to Thorne's carefully constructed indifference and his assertion of sole authority over the world of art. Only Julian Thorne and one other person truly heard and comprehended the devastating impact of those words. Seated discreetly at a corner table, pretending to enjoy the champagne, was Evelyn Reed. She was a sharp, fiercely independent art curator and gallery owner, Thorne's bitter rival, known for her avant-garde tastes and her relentless championing of emerging, unconventional artists. She was present at the gala, not for the glitz and glamour, but as an observer, always on the lookout for new talent, always sensing the undercurrents of the art world. Evelyn, with her keen eye for hidden truths and her finely tuned artistic instincts, immediately noticed Thorne's extreme, almost panicked reaction to the seemingly insignificant street artist. She saw the sudden, chilling shift in Thorne's demeanor, the quick, desperate masking of emotion, the rapid dispatch of security, and the cryptic, deeply personal nature of Ethan's desperate plea. She sensed a profound hidden story, a narrative thread just waiting to be pulled, a challenge to Thorne's narrow, prejudiced views that resonated deeply with her own artistic philosophy. Thorne, momentarily stunned by the obscure reference, hesitated. His eyes, usually so calculating, held a flicker of genuine fear before hardening into cold fury. That brief lapse was all Ethan needed. The guards, confused by the poetic outburst, briefly faltered in their approach. Ethan used the moment, ducking past them and slipping into a service corridor, melting away into the labyrinthine back passages of the grand hall. Thorne, recovering quickly, barked orders at his security team. "Find him, now, and get that charm. It's vital." His composure was visibly shaken, but he forced a strained smile back onto his face as he returned to the main stage, continuing his speech about the enduring legacy of art with an unnerving, forced sincerity. He immediately dispatched his most trusted and ruthless enforcer, Marcus, a former military intelligence officer now working as his head of security, to deal with Ethan. "Bring him to me," he instructed, his voice low and dangerous, "and retrieve the charm. Ensure he disappears permanently once it's retrieved. No loose ends. This cannot get out." His instructions clearly hinted at the true, deeply incriminating significance of the wooden charm, a piece of evidence, perhaps even a key, that could unravel his entire carefully constructed reputation and legacy. He then made a series of frantic, whispered phone calls, not to the police, but to his most trusted legal counsel, and to a shadowy figure in a distant offshore location, someone he had relied on for decades to keep his secrets buried. His words were terse, filled with thinly veiled panic, revealing his complicity in a deeply buried, potentially criminal secret involving the systematic erasure of an entire artistic bloodline, Ethan's direct lineage, and the illicit acquisition of invaluable artworks and intellectual property decades ago. The stakes had just been raised from a simple street artist's plea to a deadly game of cat and mouse, with Ethan's life and Thorne's sprawling, illicit empire hanging precariously in the balance. Evelyn Reed, observing Thorne's frantic movements and whispered calls from afar, knew with chilling certainty that this was far more than a simple matter of artistic taste. This was a deep, dark secret, and she intended to uncover it. The Grand Gallery of Viridia, usually a bastion of hushed reverence and sterile elegance, was transforming. Under Julian Thorne's meticulous, tyrannical direction, it was being meticulously prepared for the Viridia Modern Art Showcase. This was not merely an exhibition. It was to be his magnum opus, a public testament to his impeccable taste and unparalleled influence, an exhibition designed to solidify his legacy and permanently cement his rigid definition of true art. Yet, for Ethan Vance, this glittering monument to elite artistry was becoming a gauntlet, a symbolic arena where he would face his ultimate test. Ethan found himself profoundly alone in this fight. He was allowed into the gallery only through the intervention of Evelyn Reed, Thorne's shrewd and iconoclastic rival, who offered him a lifeline disguised as an opportunity. Evelyn, with her sharp mind and even sharper wit, saw in Ethan not a vagrant, but a raw, untamed talent, a genuine artist whose spirit resonated with her own belief in art's transformative power beyond the confines of tradition. She had secured him a coveted, albeit strategically challenging, spot in the Emerging Artists section of the showcase. It was a section Thorne had begrudgingly allowed, viewing it as a necessary evil to feign open-mindedness, a space he intended to fill with bland, easily dismissible works. His plan was to highlight Ethan's piece as the epitome of amateurish street art, publicly ridiculing it to reaffirm his contempt for anything outside his classical purview. Liam Carter, the investigative journalist, was a crucial ally in the broader battle against Thorne's corruption, his pen mightier than any spray can, but his domain was the truth of the system, not the raw act of artistic creation. He provided Ethan with crucial intelligence on Thorne's movements and intentions, confirming the critic's intent to publicly dissect and humiliate Ethan's work. But in the quiet, agonizing moments before the unveiling, as Ethan stood before his canvas, his hands trembling, he was on his own. The pressure to create something truly transcendent, something that could pierce Thorne's armor of arrogance, weighed heavily on him. He felt the overwhelming solitude of the artist, the solitary burden of conveying truth and beauty in a world that often valued neither. The stakes were immense, and a cruel twist of fate orchestrated by Thorne added another layer of pressure: time. Julian Thorne had cunningly manipulated the exhibition schedule. The unveiling of Ethan's controversial piece was slated for the opening night, a mere 48 hours away, placing him directly in the spotlight. Not only would this maximize the public spectacle of Thorne's anticipated mockery, but it also left Ethan with barely enough time to finish his chosen artwork. A large-scale, intricate mural that merged his signature street art style with the classical techniques he had faintly recalled from his lost childhood. He envisioned a piece that would not just be beautiful, but a profound statement, a narrative of resilience rising from the depths of urban struggle. He planned to incorporate subtle, almost hidden elements of the Celtic knot from his locket into the mural's background, a silent defiance, a whisper of his true lineage. Thorne, meanwhile, was not content with mere public humiliation. He dispatched his ruthless head of security, Marcus, to apply psychological pressure. Marcus, a master of subtle intimidation, had bribed minor gallery staff to report on Ethan's progress, ensuring Thorne was kept abreast of every brushstroke. He arranged for accidental spills near Ethan's canvas, misplaced art supplies, and orchestrated constant, demoralizing whispers about the futility of street art within Ethan's earshot. Ethan, hyper-aware of these insidious tactics, felt the tightening vice of Thorne's malevolence. Every moment was a battle, not just against the clock and his own self-doubt, but against the insidious forces actively working to undermine him. His artistic endurance, already stretched by years of hardship, was now pushed past the breaking point. The chill of the gallery, ironically heated for the elite, felt colder than any street corner he'd ever known, a stark reminder of the frigid reception awaiting his work. The ultimate test wasn't just about the painting itself, it was about Ethan's resolve. Could he, a street artist who had faced indifference and dismissal his entire life, find the inner strength to confront the most powerful and dismissive voice in the art world? Could he channel his trauma, his lost past, and his burning sense of injustice into a singular, undeniable artistic statement that would resonate beyond the gallery walls and expose the hypocrisy of those who sought to define art for their own gain? The very essence of his identity, the validity of his unique artistic voice, hung in the balance. The canvas before him, once a symbol of boundless possibility, now felt like a battlefield. He was alone, armed only with his talent, his truth, and the faint, humming warmth of the silver locket beneath his shirt. The clock was ticking, and the art world, oblivious to the deeper currents, waited to witness a public execution. The Grand Gallery of Viridia, usually a bastion of hushed reverence and sterile elegance, was transforming. Under Julian Thorne's meticulous, tyrannical direction, it was being meticulously prepared for the Viridia Modern Art Showcase. This was no mere exhibition. It was to be his magnum opus, a public testament to his impeccable taste and unparalleled influence, an exhibition designed to solidify his legacy and permanently cement his rigid definition of true art. Yet, for Ethan Vance, This glittering monument to elite artistry was becoming a gauntlet, a symbolic arena where he would face his ultimate test. The polished floors and gleaming spotlights felt less like a display of beauty and more like the cold, hard surface of a stage set for a public execution. Every gilded frame, every hushed whisper of a white-gloved assistant seemed to reinforce the chasm between his world and Thorne's. Ethan found himself profoundly alone in this fight, a solitary figure in a dazzling cage. He was allowed into the gallery only through the unlikely intervention of Evelyn Reed, Thorne's shrewd and iconoclastic rival. Evelyn, with her sharp mind and even sharper wit, saw in Ethan not a vagrant, but a raw, untamed talent. A genuine artist whose spirit resonated with her own belief in art's transformative power beyond the confines of tradition. She had secured him a coveted, albeit strategically challenging spot in the Emerging Artists section of the showcase. It was a section Thorne had begrudgingly allowed, viewing it as a necessary evil to feign open-mindedness, a space he intended to fill with bland, easily dismissible works. His plan was to highlight Ethan's piece as the epitome of amateurish street art, publicly ridiculing it to reaffirm his contempt for anything outside his classical purview. He saw Ethan as a convenient scapegoat, a living embodiment of everything he wished to discredit. Liam Carter, the investigative journalist, was a crucial ally in the broader battle against Thorne's corruption, his pen mightier than any spray can. He supplied Ethan with crucial intelligence on Thorne's movements and intentions, confirming the critic's intent to publicly dissect and humiliate Ethan's work. Liam's phone calls were a lifeline, cutting through the oppressive silence of the gallery after hours. "Thorne's been boasting," Liam had whispered during one such call, his voice low and urgent. "He's telling everyone this emerging artists section is just to prove his point that raw talent is meaningless without pedigree. He's specifically mentioned a certain street artist who he intends to educate during the opening night." But in the quiet, agonizing moments before the unveiling, as Ethan stood before his chosen canvas, a massive, blank expanse of white, daunting in its emptiness, his hands trembled. He was on his own. The pressure to create something truly transcendent, something that could pierce Thorne's armor of arrogance, weighed heavily on him. He felt the overwhelming solitude of the artist, the solitary burden of conveying truth and beauty in a world that often valued neither. He often found himself staring at the blank canvas for hours, the white surface reflecting his own self-doubt back at him. Could he truly transcend the criticism, the ingrained prejudice, the very system that sought to diminish him? The stakes were immense. A cruel twist of fate, orchestrated by Thorne, added another layer of pressure. Time. Julian Thorne had cunningly manipulated the exhibition schedule. The unveiling of Ethan's controversial piece was slated for the opening night, a mere 48 hours away, placing him directly in the spotlight. Not only would this maximize the public spectacle of Thorne's anticipated mockery, ensuring the widest possible audience for his public denouncement, but it also left Ethan with barely enough time to finish his chosen artwork. He had envisioned a large-scale, intricate mural that merged his signature vibrant street art style with the classical techniques he had faintly recalled from his lost childhood. He wanted it to be a profound statement, a narrative of resilience rising from the depths of urban struggle, a testament to art's ability to thrive anywhere. He planned to incorporate subtle, almost hidden elements of the Celtic knot from his locket into the mural's background, a silent defiance, a whisper of his true lineage, a signature only those with eyes to truly see would recognize. The chosen theme for his piece was urban renaissance, depicting a vibrant phoenix rising from crumbling concrete, its wings fashioned from discarded city materials, yet painted with the refined strokes of a master. The ambition of the piece matched the immensity of the challenge. Thorne, meanwhile, was not content with mere public humiliation. He dispatched his most trusted and ruthless enforcer, Marcus, a former military intelligence officer now working as his head of security, to apply psychological pressure. Marcus was a master of subtle intimidation, a shadow moving in the periphery, his presence a constant, unsettling reminder of Thorne's reach. He had bribed minor gallery staff to report on Ethan's progress, ensuring Thorne was kept abreast of every brushstroke, every moment of hesitation. He orchestrated accidental spills near Ethan's canvas, ruining small portions of his paint supply. He ensured vital art supplies, specific shades of spray paint, specialized brushes, were misplaced or out of stock when Ethan needed them most, forcing him to improvise, to adapt, to push himself beyond his limits. He arranged for constant, demoralizing whispers about the futility of street art, about Ethan's lack of a proper degree, about the inherent ugliness of his chosen medium within Ethan's earshot. These were delivered by seemingly innocuous gallery assistants, their smiles polite but their words sharp as shards of glass. Ethan, hyper-aware of these insidious tactics, felt the tightening vice of Thorne's malevolence. Every moment was a battle, not just against the clock and his own self-doubt, but against the insidious forces actively working to undermine him. His artistic endurance, already stretched by years of hardship, was now pushed past the breaking point. The chill of the gallery, ironically heated for the elite, felt colder than any street corner he'd ever known, a stark reminder of the frigid reception awaiting his work. He forced himself to block out the whispers, to find a rhythm in his strokes, to let the paint speak for him. He remembered the little girl's joyous gasp, the genuine appreciation in her eyes, and that small memory became a shield against the psychological warfare. He thought of his grandmother, her fierce spirit, her belief in art's power to connect, not divide. As the hours bled into the next day, Ethan barely slept. He fueled himself with lukewarm coffee and the sheer force of his will. His hands ached, his eyes burned, but the phoenix on his canvas began to take shape, its form emerging from the chaos, a vibrant testament to resilience. He incorporated discarded circuit boards and old newspaper clippings into the texture of the concrete, spray painting over them with layers of rich, classical oils, creating an interplay of old and new, raw and refined. He worked tirelessly, driven by a desperate need to not only finish the piece, but to imbue it with a message that would defy Thorne's narrow vision. He sketched the Celtic knot over and over, perfecting its subtle integration into the flowing lines of the phoenix's wings, making it almost imperceptible unless one knew exactly where to look. It would be his silent, personal signature, a mark of defiance and a claim to a forgotten legacy. The ultimate test wasn't just about the painting itself, it was about Ethan's resolve. Could he, a street artist who had faced indifference and dismissal his entire life, find the inner strength to confront the most powerful and dismissive voice in the art world? Could he channel his trauma, his lost past, and his burning sense of injustice into a singular, undeniable artistic statement that would resonate beyond the gallery walls and expose the hypocrisy of those who sought to define art for their own gain? The very essence of his identity, the validity of his unique artistic voice, hung in the balance. The canvas before him, once a symbol of boundless possibility, now felt like a battlefield where he fought not just for himself, but for every artist whose voice had been silenced, every piece of beauty dismissed as unworthy. He was alone, armed only with his talent, his truth, and the faint humming warmth of the silver locket beneath his shirt. The clock was ticking, the seconds bleeding away, and the art world, oblivious to the deeper currents, waited to witness a public execution. But Ethan, amidst the pressure, felt a strange calm settle over him. He was ready. The air in the grand gallery crackled with an almost unbearable tension. The opening night of the Viridia Modern Art Showcase was a spectacle of blinding lights, the murmur of hundreds of elite guests, and the sharp scent of champagne. Julian Thorne, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo, stood at the podium, a smug, self-satisfied smile playing on his lips. He had just finished a lengthy, self-congratulatory speech, extolling the virtues of classical art and subtly denigrating anything that dared to deviate from his rigid aesthetic. The crowd, a sea of glittering faces, hung on his every word, ready to echo his pronouncements. Ethan's piece, Urban Renaissance, stood covered by a large velvet cloth in the designated Emerging Artists section. It was strategically placed near a secondary stage, ensuring maximum visibility for Thorne's impending critique. Ethan stood nearby, a solitary figure amidst the throng, his borrowed suit feeling like a costume, his heart a frantic drum against his ribs. He could feel the weight of every dismissive glance, every whispered comment about the street artist. His hands, hidden in his pockets, clenched around the small, warm silver locket, its Celtic knot a silent talisman of his lost lineage and his defiant truth. Thorn approached the veiled canvas, a microphone now in his hand. His smile widened, a predatory gleam in his eyes. "And now, ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice dripping with condescension, "we come to a piece from our Emerging Artists section. A rather unconventional selection, one might say. An attempt, perhaps, to bridge the gap between, well, let's call it street expression and actual artistry." A ripple of polite, knowing laughter went through the crowd. While I believe in fostering new talent, it is my duty, as a critic, to guide young artists towards true aesthetic principles, and sometimes that guidance must be firm. He paused for dramatic effect, then with a flourish ripped the velvet cloth away. A collective gasp swept through the gallery. Ethan's mural, Urban Renaissance, blazed forth, a defiant explosion of color and form. A majestic phoenix, crafted from spray paint and discarded urban detritus, shards of glass, circuit boards, old newspaper clippings, rose from a crumbling concrete landscape. Its wings, vast and powerful, were painted with the refined, classical brushstrokes Ethan had subconsciously recalled from his lost childhood, blending seamlessly with the rough textures of its urban origins. The light of 1,000 tiny LED lights, subtly embedded in the circuit board elements, pulsed gently, making the phoenix appear to breathe, to pulse with life. The overall effect was breathtaking, raw, visceral, yet undeniably elegant. And hidden within the intricate patterns of the phoenix's wings, subtly interwoven into the metallic sheen of the circuit board feathers, were countless tiny, almost imperceptible Celtic knots, a silent, defiant signature. Thorn, for a fraction of a second, froze. His smug smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of shock, then a mask of furious contempt. He had expected crude graffiti, an easy target. He had not expected this. He had not expected beauty, power, and a subtle mastery that defied his every prejudice. He raised the microphone, his voice now strained. "As you can see, a bold choice of medium. But technique, alas, cannot overcome a lack of—" Before he could finish, a familiar figure moved swiftly through the stunned crowd. It was Evelyn Reed, Thorn's rival, her eyes alight with a mixture of professional awe and triumphant satisfaction. She had seen the whispers of the Celtic knot. She had recognized the fusion of styles, the undeniable raw talent beneath the street art veneer. She strode purposefully to the side of the mural, a wireless mic already in her hand, having seized the opportunity presented by Thorn's momentary stutter. "What you see before you, ladies and gentlemen," Evelyn's voice rang out, clear and resonant, cutting across Thorn's bluster, "is not merely an unconventional piece. It is a masterpiece, a true fusion of classical discipline and raw urban authenticity. Look closer. Look at the brushstrokes, the use of color, the composition. This isn't just talent, this is lineage." She pointed a slender finger to a section of the phoenix's wing, where one of the Celtic knots was particularly prominent. "And this motif," she continued, her voice gaining power, "the ancient Celtic knot, a symbol deeply intertwined with the lost Vance artistic dynasty, a family whose legacy was tragically cut short and whose unique artistic secrets were thought to be lost forever." Thorn's face turned ashen. He lunged for Evelyn, his composure completely shattered. "Silence, you fool! You know nothing," he hissed, his voice raw with panic. Marcus, Thorn's ruthless head of security, a hulking figure, suddenly materialized from the shadows, attempting to grab Evelyn. This was the bated breath moment. The crowd, initially stunned, now murmured with confusion, then outright shock. A Vance dynasty, lost secrets. Thorn's desperate, uncharacteristic outburst confirmed their suspicions. The polished veneer of the gallery crumbled into chaos. But before Marcus could reach Evelyn, Ethan, fueled by a surge of righteous fury and the buzzing warmth of the locket beneath his shirt, acted. He lunged forward, not at Marcus, but towards Thorn. He ripped the small silver locket from his own neck and with a powerful, desperate motion, threw it. The locket, glinting silver under the spotlights, soared through the air, directly towards Thorne's face. Thorne instinctively caught it. As his fingers closed around the ancient metal, a hidden spring, triggered by the force of the throw, snapped open. Inside, nestled on either side, were two tiny, perfectly preserved daguerreotypes. One was of a stern but kind-faced woman with flowing red hair, eerily similar to Ethan's own. The other was of Julian Thorne himself, much younger, his arm draped possessively around a beautiful, radiant woman who bore an undeniable resemblance to Ethan's mother, a wedding band clearly visible on her finger. It was a photographic portrait from decades ago, a stark, undeniable proof of a deep, illicit connection. The locket, now open, reflected the blinding lights, and a zoomed-in image of its contents, captured by a quick-thinking cameraman from Liam Carter's independent news team, flashed onto the giant LED screen behind Thorne. The crowd gasped. The image was undeniable. Thorne, young and smiling, with Ethan's mother. The public realization was immediate and devastating. Thorne wasn't just dismissing a street artist. He was connected to him. He was a part of the very lost lineage he despised. The reaction of the witnesses was a cathartic explosion of emotion. The murmuring crowd erupted into a chaotic roar. Faces, moments before filled with polite indifference or veiled condescension, transformed from hoary skepticism to outright shock, then to a collective, thunderous recognition and a furious demand for answers. Gasps turned into shouts, whispers into cries of fraud and liar. The image on the screen, irrefutable and damning, painted a picture of betrayal far deeper than mere artistic disagreement. Reporters, initially focused on Thorne, now swarmed Ethan and Evelyn, their microphones thrust forward. Thorne, on stage, stood frozen, the locket clutched in his hand, his face a mask of utter devastation and exposure, his entire world crumbling around him. The triumphant arch of his curated career had just collapsed, not under the weight of a poor review, but under the undeniable truth of a hidden, despicable lie. The vindication for Ethan was absolute, swift, and publicly witnessed by the entire art world. The Grand Gallery of Viridia, moments ago a stage for Julian Thorne's calculated triumph, had become the scene of his spectacular, irrefutable downfall. The triumphant blare of news sirens, previously a distant hum, now converged directly on the gallery, their flashing lights casting an urgent, chaotic glow over the stunned elite. Julian Thorne, his face a mask of utter devastation, his meticulously coiffed silver hair now disheveled, stood frozen as uniformed officers moved swiftly, decisively, to apprehend him. The locket, Ethan's locket, which had revealed its damning secret in Thorne's own hand, was carefully retrieved by an officer as evidence. Thorne was no longer the untouchable titan of the art world. He was a disgraced criminal. He offered no resistance, his arrogance finally shattered by the irrefutable truth. The charges against Thorne mounted swiftly, a cascade of legal repercussions echoing the decades of his deceit. He faced not only public humiliation, but a torrent of criminal charges: massive fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice, and the systematic destruction of evidence related to the erasure of the Vance family lineage. The subsequent investigation, fueled by the widespread public outrage and the undeniable evidence from Ethan's locket, peeled back the layers of Thorne's carefully constructed life. Detectives uncovered a meticulously planned scheme dating back decades, a calculated manipulation of wills, the forging of death certificates, and the ruthless suppression of records to ensure he inherited vast art collections, properties, and intellectual property that rightfully belonged to Ethan's maternal line, the true Vance artistic dynasty. His entire career, built on a foundation of lies and stolen legacy, crumbled. His immense wealth, derived from illicit gains, was seized by authorities, and his public image, once synonymous with refined taste, was irrevocably destroyed. Julian Thorne became a damning symbol of academic elitism, corporate greed, and familial betrayal, his name forever synonymous with deceit and hypocrisy. He would spend the rest of his life behind bars, stripped of everything he had valued. Marcus, Thorne's ruthless head of security, was also arrested, implicated in multiple felonies, including conspiracy, witness intimidation, and attempted assault. His unwavering loyalty to Thorne ultimately sealed his own grim fate. For Ethan Vance, the initial shock of vindication slowly gave way to a profound, almost overwhelming sense of relief. The whirlwind of media attention eventually subsided, leaving behind a quiet, burgeoning sense of peace. He was unequivocally proven alive, his true identity as the last living heir of the Vance artistic dynasty restored, not just legally, but in the eyes of a world that had once dismissed him. His long-lost family inheritance, a vast art collection, historical properties, and significant financial assets, was finally returned to its rightful owner. He found himself, almost overnight, a man of immense wealth and a figure of profound public interest. But Ethan, having endured years of destitution and betrayal, had no interest in personal luxury or opulent living. His heart, shaped by the harsh realities of the streets and the quiet dignity of Mr. Henderson's community center, guided his choices. His newfound resources were not for personal indulgence. They were for a far more meaningful purpose. His first act was to use his legal standing to overturn Julian Thorne's ban on street art, reclaiming not just his corner, but ensuring that artists like him would never again be silenced by arbitrary dictates. He then channeled a significant portion of his inheritance into an ambitious project, the Viridia Art and Community Initiative. This initiative purchased and transformed the very building where his urban renaissance had been unveiled, the Grand Gallery of Viridia itself. It was no longer Thorne's exclusive domain, but a public trust. He meticulously renovated it, transforming it into a modern, thriving hub for art education, social services, and artistic expression for all, especially for Viridia's most vulnerable and underserved populations. He installed free studios for emerging artists, vocational training programs, and a dedicated wing for art therapy for homeless youth. He personally oversaw every detail, from comfortable study nooks to bright, airy communal spaces, ensuring every corner resonated with inclusivity. He renamed it the Phoenix Gallery and Haven, a powerful symbol of rebirth and resilience rising from the ashes of Thorne's prejudice. Within months, it became a vibrant sanctuary, offering warmth, learning, and hope to hundreds, a living monument to art's power to heal and unite. Beyond the Phoenix Gallery and Haven, Ethan recognized the profound artistic divide that often trapped talented individuals from disadvantaged communities. He leveraged his resources to establish the Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation, a global nonprofit dedicated to fostering artistic education, providing grants for unconventional art forms, and preserving artistic freedom worldwide. His vision was clear: to empower young artists, regardless of their background or preferred medium, to use their creativity for social good, to bridge gaps, not widen them. This gave his life a purpose far grander than he could have ever imagined, healing not just his own past, but actively shaping a better future for countless artists and communities across the globe. He also initiated a program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed artworks from marginalized artists throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again. Weeks later, a quiet, almost serene afternoon found Ethan sitting with Evelyn Reed and Liam Carter in a newly furnished, brightly lit office within the Phoenix Gallery and Haven. Sunlight streamed through a large window, illuminating newly painted walls and sturdy, comfortable furniture. The room, once Thorne's private study, now served as a collaborative space for the Foundation's advisory board. The entire building hummed with the joyful sounds of children in a new learning lab downstairs, the quiet murmur of conversations in the communal cafe, and the focused hum of artists at work in the shared studios. It was a stark, comforting contrast to the cold, imposing silence it once held under Thorne's tyrannical gaze. Liam, now a celebrated, Pulitzer-winning investigative journalist for his fearless role in exposing Thorne, leaned back in his chair, a contented sigh escaping him. "It's incredible, Ethan," he said, gesturing around the vibrant space. "From battling for a street corner to owning the very gallery that tried to silence you, you've not only reclaimed your legacy, but you've transformed an entire institution. You've achieved something truly extraordinary." Ethan, now dressed in comfortable, elegant clothes that reflected his inner serenity rather than ostentation, looked at the small, intricately carved silver locket. It was no longer tarnished or dull. Evelyn, without his knowing, had taken it to a discreet, specialized jeweler, having it meticulously cleaned, restored, and infused with a subtle protective layer. It now gleamed softly, hanging on a delicate silver chain around his neck, its intricate Celtic knot design beautifully restored, reflecting the warm light. "It was my anchor, wasn't it?" he mused, turning the charm over in his fingers. "It reminded me who I was. It reminded me of the promises I made to myself, to my grandmother, to never let the past define me. And it held the truth." He looked at Evelyn, a silent acknowledgement of her belief in him, and then at Liam, for his unwavering support. "It reminded me that even when I had nothing else, I still had my truth. And that, my friends," he added, his eyes shining with a profound gratitude, "that was everything." His journey, once marked by profound suffering and betrayal, was now illuminated by an unwavering purpose, a testament to the enduring power of kindness, the relentless pursuit of justice, and the transformative magic of art itself. The whispers of the past no longer haunted him. They guided him, reminding him that even the smallest spark of creativity could ignite a revolution. The once familiar bitterness of the urban wind no longer carried the sting of indifference for Ethan Vance. Now 26, his frame was no longer gaunt, but strong and graceful, his spirit vibrant, his eyes alight with a profound sense of peace and purpose. Viridia, once a backdrop for his despair, had become a thriving testament to his enduring compassion and the transformative power of art. The Phoenix Gallery and Haven, which he had painstakingly brought to life from the ashes of Julian Thorne's elitist institution, had flourished beyond his wildest dreams. It was no longer a nascent project, but a national model, with bustling branches in 5 major cities across the country, providing comprehensive support to thousands of formerly homeless individuals and families, and serving as dynamic cultural hubs. Each haven was a testament to his vision: free art studios humming with creativity, vocational training programs teaching practical skills, and dedicated wings for art therapy, particularly for at-risk youth, offering solace and self-expression through various mediums. Alara, though no longer directly managing the daily operations, remained the haven's guiding spirit. He was a beloved fixture, often seen walking through the communal spaces, his presence a quiet anchor for those still navigating their own paths to recovery. He would sit with young residents in the new learning labs, his hands gently guiding them through coding exercises, sharing stories of his own struggles and triumphs. His words were always gentle, always encouraging, carrying the weight of lived experience and the light of hard-won hope. He often led informal workshops on street art techniques, demonstrating how beauty could be found and created anywhere, with any material. His former street art had found a new, legitimate home, celebrated for its raw honesty and evocative power, within the very walls that once would have scorned it. His life, once defined by loss and isolation, was now overflowing with purpose, camaraderie, and the profound satisfaction of truly making a difference. He was honored as a hero, not just for his tenacity in seeking justice, but for his enduring compassion and his unwavering commitment to lifting others. Ethan dedicated a significant portion of his time to ensuring that no other deserving young person would suffer his fate. He became a passionate advocate for digital literacy and ethical technology use on a national level. His voice, once a whisper, now clear and resonant as he advised congressional committees on equitable access to technology and the arts. He didn't just speak, he acted. Collaborating closely with Liam Carter, his steadfast ally who had since won a Pulitzer for his investigative journalism that exposed Adrian Thorne, Ethan co-authored a memoir titled The Locket's Promise: From Shadows to Light. The book, a raw and poignant account of his life, from his forgotten childhood to his years of destitution and ultimate reclamation, became an unexpected bestseller. It resonated deeply with readers across the nation, inspiring widespread empathy for the homeless and driving significant, tangible policy changes within government funding allocations for community support programs, especially those focusing on arts and vocational training. Crucially, a significant portion of the book's proceeds went directly back to the Phoenix Gallery and Haven Foundation and the Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation, ensuring their long-term sustainability and continued expansion. The Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation had also soared, establishing innovative digital learning centers and vibrant art schools in underserved communities globally. Ethan personally led workshops, teaching young people, especially girls, how to code, how to critically analyze information, and how to use technology and art as tools for social good. He believed that artistic expression, combined with digital fluency, was the key to unlocking future potential. He provided grants for unconventional art forms, ensuring that mediums like street art, digital art, and performance art received the recognition and funding they deserved, challenging the narrow definitions that Julian Thorne had once enforced. He also established the Thorne Truth Scholarship, an irony not lost on him, fully funding higher education for bright, ambitious students from impoverished families, ensuring that talent, unlike his own past, was never suppressed by circumstance. The scholarship's motto, etched subtly on each recipient's certificate, was, "From silence, truth takes flight," a direct nod to his own arduous journey and the symbolic wooden bird and silver locket that had guided him. He also initiated a vast international program to restore and digitize thousands of lost or suppressed artworks from marginalized artists throughout history, ensuring their contributions would never be forgotten again. He worked tirelessly to establish art as a fundamental human right, not a luxury. The story culminates on a warm, golden afternoon in the sun-drenched central courtyard of the flagship Phoenix Gallery in Haven, in Viridia. The courtyard, meticulously tended by residents and volunteers, was a vibrant oasis of calm, alive with the buzzing of bees among newly planted flowers, the soft murmur of conversations from a communal cafe, and the distant, joyful sounds of children engaged in an outdoor art class. Ethan sat on a rustic wooden bench, custom-built by the Haven's carpentry program. The bench's design subtly incorporated elements of the Celtic knot from his locket, its intricate curves carved into the polished wood. He was surrounded by a small group of young students from the Vance Artistic Legacy Foundation's mentorship program. They listened intently, their faces reflecting a mixture of respect and quiet hope, as he shared a story not of grand victories, but of small acts of kindness that had kept his spirit alive during his darkest days. He emphasized the importance of resilience, of finding beauty in unexpected places, and of using one's unique voice to create change. These young individuals, once facing uncertain futures, were now empowered and thriving, their eyes holding the promise of new beginnings, a testament to the Haven's transformative power. In his hand, Ethan held the original, now beautifully polished silver locket. Its surface, gleaming under the afternoon sun, reflected the verdant hues of the courtyard and the bright, hopeful faces of the children. The intricate Celtic knot design, once dulled by time, now shone with renewed brilliance, a testament to its enduring legacy. He turned the original charm slowly in his palm, feeling its smooth, familiar contours. The faint, warm hum that had always accompanied it seemed stronger now, a comforting presence. The little wooden bird, carved by his own hand years ago, was now incorporated into the Haven's official logo, subtly etched onto the entrance sign, its wings outstretched in hopeful flight, symbolizing the freedom and upliftment the center provided. He looked up, his eyes once weary and shadowed, now reflecting a deep, serene joy and an unbreakable spirit, as he watched a group of children from the Haven playfully release a flock of homing pigeons into the clear blue sky from the rooftop garden. The pigeons circled once, twice, then flew off towards the horizon, a powerful gesture symbolizing hope, freedom, and the promise of a brighter future for all. The street artist, once dismissed and forgotten, had not only unveiled a family secret that changed everything, but had become the architect of a new, more compassionate world, where art truly belonged to everyone. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies, and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming narratives that delve into the profound human spirit and the power of unseen heroes. Thank you for joining our journey.